everyone, welcome to GoTarryn TV. This is Dr. T, PhD, the Prodigy Sports Psychology, and we are nearing the end of this playlist. That's right, this is week number 8, as we're going to be interviewing the 8th participant and asking that individual questions about how they were motivated and their self-determination factors to realizing their personal training goals. That brings me to, of course, the 8th key strategic point in this research dissertation study, and let me tell you what that involves. There's going to be 5 elements that comprise something known as the purpose statement. What was the purpose of this study? And the purpose statement should comprise the following 5 items, and that includes the problem statement, the methodology, the design, the population and sample, and finally the location. And thus that brings me to bringing you the purpose of my dissertation study, that being the purpose of this qualitative descriptive design was to determine how millennials living in the greater Atlanta area describe self-determination as a contributor to realizing their current personal training goals. And like I mentioned, that is what the heart and soul of this study was. And like any dissertation, you have to have a purpose if you're going to contribute to adding scientific knowledge to the body of existing literature. And that was what I was trying to do. That was what I was achieving to accomplish in this study. And that's what came into fruition to developing my article in the peer-reviewed Journal of Performance Psychology. And that brings us to week number 8 as we find out what the purpose of the study was and continue on in our interview questioning with participant number 8 here in week number 8. And I want to bring that to you here momentarily, and I just also want to remind you to make sure to like this video, leave us a comment, and share it with all of your friends and family out there. So without any more delay, here comes participant number 8 here on week number 8. Enjoy.
And I'm recording on Zoom right now, and we have the participant on the line. I do want to first thank the participant for being here, and I also want to make sure that the participant can hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And this study itself, you have completed a demographic questionnaire first, which we will make sure that I confirm that all of it is correct at the end of the interview. And you did list your goal attainment on there, which was quite impressive. Your scores on your self-determination survey that you turned in were very high. And so in taking account of a composite of both your goal attainment and your self-determination theory survey that you scored very high, and that's what brings us to this final sample to do the interview, which again I'll be conducting. I'm trying to achieve myself in completing a dissertation study, which is the purpose of the research questions that I'm about to ask you here in the interview. The purpose of this study is to examine how millennials like yourself who live in Atlanta, Georgia, describe self-determination as a contributor to realizing those your current personal training goals. The length of the interview will go approximately 40 to 60 minutes. This information we're hoping will provide great value to you, as it'll hopefully create a profile and contribute to how millennials' self-determination overall relates to goal attainment when it comes to personal training. And I'm going to be asking you a lot of descriptive questions, very open-ended. There are no right or wrong answers to any question I'm going to ask you, but the questions that you answer for me will help build an individual self-determination profile. And then that will go into the final sample of other participants that we're interviewing to build this overall picture of what's called a qualitative descriptive study. And I do want to also, this is very important here. It's critical that I ask you these 2 questions first. They're both, these are yes or no questions here, but they're to do with the informed consent form. Can you please tell me, were you given an informed consent form for the survey and understand everything on that survey? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And did you also turn in and acknowledge and understand an informed consent form for the interview that we're about to conduct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. At any time, if you have any questions on that, either informed consent form or the interview, please feel free to stop me. And also,
Sure.
at any time, you have the power to stop this interview. You're volunteering for this interview, and so that means that you're in control. You can stop the interview for any reason at all. And also, your confidentiality will be maintained just as every other participant. No names will be published in the final study. And all the transcripts and recording that I'm about to do on everybody are going to be stored and saved on an encrypted, password protected computer.
Got it.
And after 3 years, all that data will be destroyed. And that's to protect any of the integrity that we're gathering in our data collection. But I do want to let you know that upon conclusion of the interview, I will be sending you the audio file of our interview as well as an audio transcript. And I'm doing that for the purpose of member checking. And what that is that I'd like to ask if you have time to please whenever you can, just look over the interview, listen to it, whatever you prefer, and just check for errors or anything that wasn't correct. If anything was taken out of context and you answered something that you didn't intend it to sound like that way, or wanted to change anything, revise, edit, then please get back to me, because it helps build reliability and validity of the study. And so when you get back to me, I have plenty of time to make any modifications that you want, or if there's anything that you answered and you said, I need that taken
Got
out.
it.
Or
Very
yeah.
interesting.
So that I just want to let you know all of that before we start the interview. And at the end of the interview, by the way, you will have an opportunity to ask any questions that you'd like, make any comments. And I will leave and reserve enough time for you to do that as well. Now, just so you know, before we jump into the questions here, I'm going to be covering a few words with you just for making sure that these concepts that we talk about are understood in layman's terms, that they're crystal clear to you, that you 100% know what they mean. Now, the overarching question of my study was, how do millennials describe self-determination as a contributor to realizing their current personal training goals? Now, that leads into one of the sub-questions of that overarching question. Research question number 1 was, how do millennials describe their self-determination in terms of autonomy, competence, and relatedness? We have gotten your answer on that through the survey that you gave us. Your survey that you answered had nothing to do with personal training. It only had to do with autonomy, competence, and relatedness as it's related to your self-determination. Now, what we're going to do is take your answers and kind of go a little bit further into exploring that connection to personal training goals. So, when we talk about the first research question, we're going to be talking about autonomy. Let me just kind of give you the definition from self-determination theory of autonomy. Autonomy is the desire for an individual to be the causal agent of his or her own life and act in harmony with his or her own integrated self. So in other words, it's somebody who is very independent and control over their own feelings, their own psychology, and has freedom of internal will. And so, for example, on the survey you provided for us, one of the autonomy questions on the Likert scale that had to do with autonomy was that you were doing what you feel that matched and aligned with your interests, and you scored very high overall on autonomy. So now when we talk about autonomy, let's bring that into the first question I'm going to ask you. But before I do you have an understanding of what we're looking for when we talk about autonomy?
Yeah,
Okay.
very interesting, and thanks for delineating it.
Yes, of course, certainly. Well, let me ask this then. Before I ask you this question, research question number 2 was, how do millennials describe autonomy as a contributor to realizing their personal training goals? So as we talk about autonomy, here's my first question to you as we start up the interview. Can you describe whether you had some degree of autonomy, or to what degree your autonomy was in your personal training program, whether it was none at all, small, moderate, or large? What did autonomy look like in your personal training program?
So, I think what you mean, like, to ask is, so when I was beginning to training, it was all how often I would with the program and
Yes.
interact with a personal trainer.
Right, exactly.
Um,
And that includes the achievement of your goals too. Like when you hired your personal trainer and started wanting to get your goal attainment, what did your autonomy level look like? How independent and free will were you in making that decision and going that path?
so it was completely my decision. It came out of the blue, and I found I researched and found a personal trainer that seemed engaging and seemed hardcore in the
Hmm.
sense that would get me all the way to where I wanted to go. And then while he had a easy to use structure that kept me involved and interested and made what I had to do was laid out clearly, but it was me who chose every time to stick to that program and not quit. And even when it was extremely difficult, because I focused on what I wanted.
Interesting. Okay. And so there's a couple words there that I want to ask you about the way you just answered that. That's interesting. First of all, you mentioned wanted to make sure that you didn't quit. And let's talk about that for a second.
Yep.
How important is that to you in not quitting and making sure that you continue on and stay the course? And in this case, we're talking about achieving your personal training goals.
It's an extremely important concept to me, and
Hmm.
for some reason it cuts right to my core, and
Okay.
I can't really explain it. But I don't like quitting on anything, and I like accomplishing it and conquering it, and I can't conceive of just just letting it like fail and just being weak. I just can't imagine if it's something that's important, then it's gonna get done unless it's actually better for it not to be done. And it's really not working. And then something else has to be tried, but it's not a quitting of effort. And even that's hard to do. It's hard for me to quit on something that's not working and better that I should go somewhere else because it's so ingrained in me to not quit. I don't know. If you want, I
Mm.
can relate it to directly to training if you'd like.
No, that's good. Yeah, that's a good. Can you, yeah, go a little further and maybe give us an example of what that looks like?
Sure. So, a couple examples.
Hmm.
So, let's say I was really, when I was really sore after training, let's say the first week I started, and there's, I don't know, 4 days of training out of seven, or five out of 7 days of training, and then 2 days that I'm just doing abs. So,
Hmm.
uh, after day two or whatever, I was extremely sore and could barely move, and I crawled out of the bed because I couldn't even stand up, and went and did my exercise somehow. Um, so there, I think that that would be something to quit, but that wasn't really an option. For me, another area um, where quitting came up was when I got bitten by a copperhead snake a few times on
Mm.
my leg, and I couldn't walk, and it was an excruciating pain, etc. I and lost a lot of my muscle development. This is later, obviously, from when I started my
Hmm.
training. And maybe people would have been uh, arisen the idea of quitting after something like that because I really would have had to restart, but that thought never even occurred to me. The only thought that kept coming was I'm going to get back to where I was really fast, and I'm going to go way further than where I was beforehand. And it was just there was no other option. Um, yeah.
Good. Now, let me ask you kind of an opposite question to that. Conversely, were there any times in your program where maybe you felt that your daily activities in the personal training program were like a chain of obligations that almost like you were being forced to do them?
Close. I wouldn't say force, but
Hmm.
there was periods where it felt monotonous. Like, okay, this is what I have to do. It's not exciting. I'm going to do it. And I did it, but I didn't do it with as much gusto, and I didn't do it as often. So I didn't get the type of results that I was getting beforehand. So
Mm.
then but I realized that that was happening. So what I then did is I switched it up and changed the setting so that it would stay exciting, changed the program so that I purchased a different um, uh, working out with the trainer in a little different way
Hmm.
um, to explore. Let me try it this way because I know if I can get excited and if I can get some other uh, way of working out, that might be what I'm missing and to get me to my goal, and that worked.
Mm. And you know, earlier in the interview, you mentioned how your goals were aligned to what your wants were. Let's talk about wants for a second in the realm that, would you say, and again, to what degree did it look like that your wants in your personal training for desires of whatever you were looking to do and your goals, how, to what degree or extent did they co-align with the decisions that reflected with who you are? And in other words, did those wants express who you are if someone knows who you are when they look at you?
So are you saying that what I want, did I go after it? Did I get that? Or like,
Right. That's a good way to,
put it a
yeah.
little
And
differently?
what did that look like? Yeah. Just describe that, please.
So can you actually ask your question a little differently? I'm not sure I understand.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, the expression that you have for your choices and your desires, what did that look like at the beginning of your trying to attain those personal training goals?
Okay.
Hmm.
So at the very beginning when I started training,
Hmm.
I decided in my mind that I want to look a certain way and I want to be a certain amount strong. Like I want to my arms,
Hmm.
legs, everything I want to be a certain way. And I also wanted to be extremely athletic, uh, uh, powerful,
Hmm.
and trim also. And that's the painting I made in my mind very clearly.
Mm.
And then every exercise I did it with that painting in mind. Does
Mm.
that help?
That's good. That's good. Go a little further into that, please, because you used the word painting. That's a good illustrative word to use. Would you say then your autonomy? Are you more of a visual learner when you were learning the personal training exercises? Is that a way? Is that fair to assume, or did you visualize in your mind what it looked like of getting stronger and more athletic? Kind of go a little bit more into descriptive detail there, please.
I definitely visualized what I would look like and what I would want to look like
Hmm.
and where I was at present, and then focusing on the end goal
Okay.
and making like breathing life into it by exercising. Um, and I wasn't sure the rest of the question.
No, that's good. Let me ask you this though. And again, just thinking about, maybe were there any examples that happened where, did you ever feel like maybe the trainer was asking you to do too many things at any given time, that you were actually being pressured to do certain exercises?
I only felt that not quite like that, but on a lesser scale.
Hmm.
It started getting monotonous. Like I already finished the program with him,
Uh-huh.
then I just started the program again for the second time, and it was a lot less exciting because
Mm-hmm.
I already got a lot out of it. And now what am I doing? Like yes, there's form to improve on, but it started feeling a little bit like an obligation, and I started getting a little less results. Um, but then after a period of still doing it, I never quit. Um, I, like I said before, I decided to switch it up and keep it new and start a different program, and then got great results from there.
Okay, good. Were there any times that any outside external forces negatively or adversely affected you attaining your personal training goals, besides the snake bite example you just gave us? Anything else that happened during your course of training that set you back, or was an obstacle or a challenge that you weren't expecting, that might have challenged both your autonomy and your own motivation?
Well, I just want to put in that it was a venomous snake bite. I just want credit.
Oh.
But yeah, so moving on from there, I no, I didn't I had a lot of positive pressure from other sources, which we will hopefully we'll talk
Mhm,
about. But in terms of negative ones,
mhm,
only one would be stress in life, let's say with family members,
mm,
um, or friends or
mhm.
community or religion. Any
Okay,
negative pressure like that
okay.
um, would kind of leave me a little less would could sometimes leave me less motivated, less alive feeling. So then when I go and do my exercise, I'm not putting as much effort into it. So I'm still in the game, but I'm not, you know, developing at a high level like I was when I was you know, not in that kind of depressed mindset.
Good. And you just mentioned on the flip side of the coin, positive forces. Is there any story or examples you could share that have to do with any outside forces that were just the opposite in terms of they were more positive and positively impacted specifically your autonomy, that you can relate to your personal training goals?
Yeah, so two things that are very different. Number
Hmm.
one, my trainer himself told me that, you're responsible, like quit giving excuses and quitting and not that I was doing that stuff, but just
Mm-hmm.
hearing somebody saying it straight up that it's attainable. Don't listen
Mm.
to the marketing, don't listen to, the fads.
Mm-hmm.
It takes hard work, there's no excuses. Put it in, be consistent, follow the program. That type of positive reinforcement
Mm-hmm.
and and the person having exercises that were science-based and helped and I got to see the results of my body and I got to understand the body like biomechanically and exercises that was a huge positive reinforcement for me to stay in doing this because hey, this works.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the flip side, something very different, um, which I think a lot of people would call negative negative pressure on exercise,
Mm-hmm.
but I see it differently. When somebody told me that I was weak or that I wasn't strong enough, or if I remember back to when I was a kid
Mm-hmm.
and let's say I had asthma or something like that, that I didn't feel like I was strong, or I see somebody else who I who I who I don't like, or they cause they not cause but they present an obstacle in my life of difficulty, I really dig deep down and use that as extreme fuel for exercise and get extremely intense sessions and output because of that. And so it actually is the best fuel for my training.
That's good. That's good. Let me ask you this, as we're kind of looking at the full spectrum of your autonomy. When you look back on your personal training goals, and again, just in terms of going back to how autonomous, how independent you were, and relating it to your own free will, my question to you is, how successful were you in achieving your personal training goals because of your autonomy?
That's interesting. I think I never thought about it that way, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it did relate a lot to my success
Mm-hmm.
because the fact that I was choosing it and nobody else was forcing me to do it or telling me to do it, and I um, I viewed myself as responsible for getting there, um, really meant that what I did mattered, so then I better start doing. Like if it's really up to me, then that's such an opportunity because then I can do whatever I want, and that's great, and so I'll get there. So I think in that regard, it was very related.
Good, good. Okay, excellent. I'm going to move on now to the next second component of the three in self-determination theory. But before I do, please hang on to that autonomy word in the back of your head somewhere, because we'll revisit that later.
Sure.
Um, my next research question, as I build this profile for research question number three, is how do millennials describe competence as a contributor to realizing their personal training goals? So when we're talking about
Mm.
this word competence, as defined by self-determination theory, it's seeking to control the outcome and experience mastery. In other words, mastering a skill. In this case, maybe be it mastering the art of exercise or eating correctly, proper exercise and diet and nutrition.
Mhm.
My next question to you then, as we talk about competence, can you please describe whether you had some degree of competence or to what degree your competence was, whether it was none, small, moderate, or large, in achieving your personal training goals?
Sure, like at the outset or now or in between or wherever.
Yeah, like out the outset, overall,
Okay.
looking back in summary, what now in retrospect, how can you credit competence? Did it have an impact? And if so, how much credit do you give it?
Okay, so I started off with a moderate degree of competence or small degree of competence,
Mm-hmm.
where I knew exercises and I knew um, I had a background playing some sports and doing some exercise, but I didn't understand the full picture. I had
Mm-hmm.
made plenty of mistakes and I hadn't really achieved any sense of mastery beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Along the process, all those areas grew. So I knew what I was doing more. I got more confident in my results, and I started engaging new areas of learning, such as nutrition, which I never entertained before at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in hindsight, mastery has definitely increased across the entire spectrum to a large degree, and it's still continuing because now I realize what more I have to learn, and that's what I'm seeking out the people that I can learn that from. Does
Mm-hmm.
that answer the question?
That's great. Yes. And, again, you answered on the survey that you filled out for us, you scored highly on that as well. So, for example, quote, I feel confident that I can do the things well. And, on that one, you were very high as well. So, on any of these questions as they relate to personal training,
Oh, sorry.
um,
Can I just interrupt to add on the last point
yes, please.
that the I want to like be clear that in the beginning I didn't have a sense of mastery and I
Okay.
didn't know what I was doing
Hmm.
well. I knew a little bit and um, and especially around nutrition and but I did believe that I could do it with with his help,
Hmm.
and so yeah, it's a bit of both.
Good. Okay. Um, with that, is there a percentage that you can provide, and maybe it doesn't exist, maybe it does, but if it did, is there a percentage of that competence that's split between you and the personal trainer? So, for example, is it just as important for you to learn that competency and get better at the mastery for these goals to be attained, or not necessarily? As long as your trainer is highly competent, you'll hit those goals. Let's go into that a little bit. What does that look like to you?
Oh, that's really interesting. So in the beginning, I definitely didn't know, like it was more him helping providing that competency, let's say like
Hmm.
70-30 or 60-40 towards him.
Hmm.
And then with time that started shifting to now let's say it's 60-40 towards me or 70-30 towards me, and that
Mm.
I just use him to provide some important knowledge and encouragement and exercises, but I could do it on my own now, and but it's still valuable, significantly valuable to keep using him. Um, and let's see, yeah, was there anything else? The question I left out?
No, that's good. Further exploring that, then let me ask you this: when you're working with him, and when you were overall in the program, how successful were you to complete specifically very, very hard, challenging, difficult tasks that he asked of you when it comes to your competency? What did that look like? Were you happy with that, and why?
So I did all his difficult tasks and easy tasks, and
Hmm.
I did them all. I his this in the beginning, especially his difficult tasks, I couldn't accomplish in the time frame, but
Hmm.
I just stayed after and finished them in the time frame that I could. And there, in my mind, I was doing it, and that I knew the second time around when that comes, I'd be able to do it better. Um, and what was the last part? You said something and why?
Yeah, no, you answered that in terms of specifically the difficult tasks that he was giving you. So, was there a particular example that you could provide for maybe one of the most hard, challenging tasks that he asked of you that maybe you had to think about if whether or not you could do it?
Well, I didn't think about whether I could do it or not.
Hmm.
I just tried my hardest. Let's say it was a hundred cross knee push-ups, a
Hmm.
hundred opposite elbow to knee planks,
Hmm.
100 jumping jacks, and then like 100 burpees, like all in one with a minimal rest and like just going from one to the other. And I was in control of the order, let's say. Um, and that it was supposed to be done in a certain time frame or whatever, and just couldn't do it in that time frame, so I just continued, took the minimum breaks and did it until I actually did it and felt outstanding.
Good. Let me ask you this. Were there any times at all that in those difficult tasks, were you provided any maybe unexpected positive feedback from your trainer where he was surprised that you were able to do it so proficiently? And then the second part to that question is, if he did that directly improve and increase your own intrinsic motivation for competence?
Oh, like if he like complimented that I was doing well, did that help me? Is that what you're saying?
Right. And what did that look like, specifically to improving your own need for competence?
My own what?
Need for competence. Like, how did it affect your intrinsic motivation?
Okay.
Hmm.
So I mean, getting positive reinforcement back from him when I finished a challenge
Hmm.
or a week and that it was time to rest, it was nice because like I'm part of this, elite group of people that are really working on themselves in this
Mm-hmm.
area.
Hmm.
This area we're gonna be, pretty darn good.
Hmm.
And that did feel good. And it did help me continue. Um, and it helped me give a positive motivation, stay in the loop and in the program and doing and producing, working out. But even if he wouldn't have done that, I still would have done it anyway, though, because I really think that once I saw that this could work and once I saw how intense it was, it was like I was sold, So, but it helped.
Good, good. Let me ask you this. Were there ever any times that you felt like you might have been a failure because of any of the mistakes you made, and thus that was adversely affecting you, where you, again, just felt like you had failed, let's say, an exercise, and you blamed yourself for it because it might have been a mistake that you'd unintentionally made for any reason?
Well, it wasn't really mistake, but it's kind of like some of the exercises I had to learn them and I wasn't able to kind of slickly get into the form and do it properly
Mm-hmm.
or keep up the stamina for long enough. And I was like, oh well, other people are probably doing it and I can't yet.
Mm-hmm.
That thought goes in my mind, but it's never about quitting. It's just like, okay, I got a lot of room to grow. I got a lot of stuff to do. So let me put in a ton of effort and I'm sure I'll get there. And and I allowed myself to not be perfect with it. I just tried my hardest and I knew that that was going to be enough.
Good. Now, can you please think back in your program of an example? And we've talked about how the word competence is almost synonymous with the word confidence. Can you give any example that you could think about where it looked like you really illustrated your confidence, which in turn thus led to achieving your personal training goals, your confidence level?
I believe so. And let me know if this fits.
Hmm.
I outside of the program, my own started to do my own exercises and I hopped on a treadmill and just put it on the fastest speed it can go and ran and I did a mile in 5 minutes and then looked it up later if that was any good. And apparently it is really good.
Mm.
Um, and then I realized like, holy crap, like this works. Like I've been accomplishing things and it's something to be proud of. And I, I wasn't even training for that, but the fitness overall provided was enough to do that.
Good, good. That is fast. How about this question? Were there any times in any of your performances, your exercises that you did in your program, that you might have felt disappointed with them? Any disappointment come into play at any given time?
Disappointment towards what? Or just in general?
Yeah, in general, with any of the specific exercises, the way you perform them, any performing the exercises where you questioned if you had done them correctly for the trainer, or maybe he wasn't satisfied. Did any frustration ever come up to play at all in creating disappointment?
Yes, small bits when sometimes he would prescribe an exercise for me to do at home and I didn't have the equipment for it. And then I had to kind of
Mm-hmm.
makeshift do it. And it was good to be able to do it even in a makeshift way.
Mm-hmm.
But it did feel a little bit lacking. Like I really, if I had this stuff, this would be better. And sometimes I just didn't have the right equipment to do it at all. And I had to skip it or do some my own variation of it. Um, and um, when I didn't, let's say, complete the number of reps that I was supposed to do in a certain amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
then it would be a little frustrating. Like I got to get on the ball. but it was never that wasn't like a big that wasn't a big thing. It was just like, it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna next time I'll get it, I'm just gonna keep trying harder.
Mm-hmm.
But having the tools was having the not having the tools was probably the closest to frustrating that anything got. And also, like I keep going back to it, the monotony of
Mm-hmm.
when I was doing the program for the second time, not having that fire and that drive was a little bit frustrating.
And those words specifically, you had mentioned with fire and drive. Let's talk about that and look a little deeper into that too. Um, how important is it then, would you say, for yourself to maintain that fire, that drive, to appropriately match and reach your competency in terms of reaching your personal training goals?
I think it's very important because I'm
Mm-hmm.
at the point now where if I don't train with fire and passion, then I'm going to go backwards. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because if somebody were to train, if I never trained and then I just trained without passion, I'd get places, I'd get results because it's a triumph for the past still.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
um, along this process, I got to the point where I'm actually quite fit. So if in order to move forward, I have to really bring something extra. So it's very important for me. And also, I want to get further. So I have to find places that are exciting, got to find equipment that's new or that I really enjoy, and find ways to get motivated. And that's my responsibility to help push it further.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned that's your responsibility, and you mentioned a few minutes ago at the beginning of the interview how the trainer mentioned, you've got to be responsible on your own. So, would you say when we've talked about autonomy, now we're talking about competence, is one more important than the other necessarily? Are they equal? What does that look like for yourself in terms of prioritizing? Well, autonomy,
Oh, that's a
competence.
great question.
Hmm.
Wow, that's a great question. So I really think that um, autonomy is more important because
Mm-hmm.
I see people that are that are competent
Mm-hmm.
and they don't follow their own advice, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that that m- raises suspect that it's really about what you do, what you have internally, but
Mm-hmm.
also I don't want to skew it because competence plays a big role because a lot of times I or other people thought that they were really competent in something and um, didn't get to, let's say, where they wanted to get in fitness or whatever, and then later on learn new stuff, and then now I'm so much further along, and then I realized, well, I wasn't as competent as I thought I was, and now knowing this stuff and realizing these exercises, realizing this nutrition, realizing how to motivate, now is actually these extra tools really help also. Um, but they wouldn't help if I didn't have the desire and responsibility to implement them for myself. Um, so they go hand in hand like a glove.
Good, good. Wow. Okay, let me ask you then this question. And again, we're only talking about competency on this question here now. When
Okay.
we look back on your personal training goals, then how successful were you in achieving your personal training goals because of your level of competency?
I think I was very successful at it. Getting athleticism, getting power, getting stamina, getting health, from a nutritional standpoint and also from exercise standpoint.
Mm,
But the horizon is further off, and I'm not there yet. And I'm gonna keep going.
good, good for you. Okay, I'd like to move on to the third component that self-determination theory defines here, known as relatedness, a synonym that is
Oh,
often. Mhm.
sorry. I
Oh,
just
no,
want to
no,
add
please.
one more point. There
Yes.
is a little bit of lingering of like doubt, as in like I am not there yet. Like it's not good enough. There's a little bit of that too. There's a lot of power, but there's also a little bit of, like I haven't arrived the way I was supposed to yet, and I still need to, and it's lacking. Just want to be.
Mm.
clear. Yeah.
Okay, good. No, that's good. I'm glad you added that. That's very interesting. Okay, well, now when we talk about then my next research question, number 4, how do millennials describe relatedness as a contributor to realizing their personal training goals? When we look at the word relatedness, and relatedness, again, you scored high on in the self-determination theory survey, for example, feeling that people you care about also care about you. And again, you were in high alignment with that as you were with all the relatedness questions. So now when we talk about relatedness, a synonym for relatedness is
Did I score high really on that?
yeah, for example, yes. I feel that the people I care about also care about me. You gave a 4, meaning almost completely true. So when we talk about that word here with in your personal training goals, I'll just ask you the first question right off the bat. Can you describe whether you had some degree of relatedness or to what degree your relatedness was in achieving your personal training goals, be it small, none, moderate, large?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the question. So relatedness as opposed fitting into exercise. What do you mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, for example, because you scored high on the relatedness survey too, now we're tying that into your personal training goals specifically. So, earlier you've
Mm.
mentioned and you've gone into the answering of how autonomy had to do with achieving your personal training goals, how your competency level influenced reaching your personal training goals. Now, the same exact question here as far as relatedness goes. Did relatedness, in other words, your relatedness to your
Oh,
personal
I think
trainer,
think I got.
did that relationship influence, and maybe it didn't at all, maybe there was 0, there was small, medium, large, to what degree would you say your relatedness with your personal trainer affected reaching your personal training goals?
Um, I think it played a role, the relatedness
Mm-hmm.
towards my personal trainer, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
know to what extent. So I really can't honestly answer
Okay.
that question.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say that relatedness towards other things did make a difference. For instance, in two ways, like
Mm.
um, the fact that I felt close with my family members,
Mm-hmm.
with not all of them, but a bunch of them, and like
Mm-hmm.
my little brothers, and that gives me an internal strength to know that I can do this and it's important and people rely on me. And
Mm-hmm.
like my dog relies on me, my wife relies on me, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just like I need to I need to be good, I need to be strong, and I need to accomplish. Just that general push, even if it's not verbalized, it's just like I have to do it. Helped, and meeting friends that really connected with. Um, so that gave me a sense of strength, to be able to do it. On the flip side, though, which is really weird, is that even a lot of times there was a sense of non-relatedness, of aloneness and isolation,
Mm.
and from family, friends, community, whatever religion, and that also was used as direct fuel to exercise. So
Mm.
I don't know.
Mm. Interesting. How about the connection with your trainer? Was that also attributing to giving you the strength and pushing you harder in realizing your goals?
I don't know. It could be that it made a
Mm-hmm.
huge impact. It could be it made very little impact. I really don't
Hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm. Were there situations, would you describe that your relationship with your trainer, spending time with him in the workout sessions, did they ever exude any warmth or closeness? Did you feel that any time in your workout sessions with your trainer?
Yes, actually, now that you're more specific, that you made it more specific, I
Mm-hmm.
thinking so. Yeah, actually, that like the bond of working out, of having somebody that's accountable, um, being accountable, like that. That's gonna make sure that like, oh, did I do it? And am I finishing the program? Am I finishing the workouts? Am I putting in effort? And him taking the time to get to know me about what gets me going and what you know makes me feel defeated, so that and being there to support me outside of just exercises, that that whole structure is a structure that helps and is empowering and keeps me in the game and keeps me going further. Yeah, it's a positive force, I think.
I want to stick on this word that you just ended in that last sentence. You said empowering. And I want to know what that's like for you as we're talking about this right now with relatedness. How important, to what degree is it for you to have empowerment over your personal training program and reaching your goals?
It's a great question. It's really important because then it's exciting and it's attainable and it's worth it.
Mm.
Um, so what was the beginning? You said how important is empowering is
hmm
what'd you
Yeah,
say?
because the reason I'm asking that, it's very interesting. The beginning of the interview, you had reiterated how you did not want to quit anything, and I asked you how important it was to not quit, and you had answered in seeing things through. And just now, again, you reiterated how you wanted to make sure you finished whatever task your trainer was asking you to do, and so that really aligns with what you've said. You've been very consistent with that. So would you say that that has something to do with the connection to your empowerment then?
Like making sure I'm finishing the task related to empowerment. I don't know if this works, and I don't know if I
Mhm.
fully get it, but I'll try.
Mhm.
I always feel like I have to take a shot, that I have
Mhm.
to try
Mhm.
my hardest,
Mhm.
and I can't have the situation pass by without me doing that, because it would be just a loss. It'd be a failure. The opportunity would never come again, and so I have to try because it's worth it. It's worth it to try.
Good, good. Let me ask you the opposite question. Uh, was there ever a time where you might have felt like your relationship with your trainer was cold and distant, therefore not warm and not close, and it was almost like a business transaction? Did that ever happen? And if so, can you give us an example of that?
Let me think. Um, I guess a little bit when it comes to like when I adequately completed something,
Mm-hmm.
and then I realized it doesn't take in all the whole range of exercise, and there's still more to learn, and I have to like purchase more programs in
Mm-hmm.
order to get those benefits as well.
Mm.
So it's kind of like a bummer that it wasn't all included in that first run, but it's not really a big deal because him as a trainer, he's learning also, so he learned new things, so he's sharing those new things, and those new programs are also worth it. Um, and it's a learning process. So I mean, I was 28 years old, and I didn't try these things for 23 years of them, and now all of a
Mm.
sudden I'm learning stuff. So I'm not going to take everything right away. So it makes sense that it takes time, but it's a little bit more annoying rather than just going outdoors and like getting it all in just one go, like one year or whatever.
Good. Let me ask this question then. With your trainer, how mutually connected would you say you both shared that level of connection? In other words, do you believe that it was equal 50-50? You each cared for each other the same? Or do you feel that maybe you've put more effort into the relationships, therefore you cared more for your trainer, vice versa, the trainer cared more for you? How did that look like in terms of reaching your goals? Did your trainer take your goals as serious as his own?
Um, Let me think. I think there was definitely tremendous
Mm-hmm.
um, mutual caring both ways, and that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't change anything you make wrong. So if he didn't like me or didn't get along with me, then he wouldn't be able to reach me, and I wouldn't be able to get to it with his help, and vice versa. So I don't know who was giving out more, and that's a very interesting question. I just don't know the answer yet. But I know we were both invested genuinely.
Good, good. Let me ask this overarching question then. When we look back on your relatedness, your relationship with your trainer, your connection, um, how successful then were you in achieving your personal training goals thanks to that level of relatedness?
I think it makes a big difference
Mm-hmm.
because if I felt that he didn't care or he couldn't reach me or just going through rote, I think as soon as the monotony set in or difficulty set in, then um, I might have taken another route or not accomplished it, possibly. Um, so having someone that I related to helps keep me in the game and keep me moving forward. I probably would have stayed in the game regardless, but moving forward. And for a lot of people, it's probably a big deal to be able to not quit by have it because they have relatedness with their trainer or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Good, good. That's excellent. We've covered autonomy, we've covered competence, we've covered relatedness. According to self-determination theory, these three components are the real heart and soul of how self-determined one is. Now, let me ask you this question. When we talk about that word, self-determination, this is my next question to you in terms of, again, those three components and self-determination. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. I just like to know what you perceive this as. The millennial generation is anyone aged 24 through 39. How does your generation, the millennials, compare to other generations in terms of self-determination?
Okay, so is this in general self-determination or just in fitness and nutrition?
Kind of both. Think about it both with overall, generally, who's more self-determined, who's less self-determined, they're equal, and then really take that step into describing it specifically of what we've just been talking about with proper nutrition, diet, personal training goals.
Okay, so I think that the millennials as a whole don't feel a strong sense of self-determination. And I hear a lot of that I'm stuck in this situation or it's
Mm,
the other person's fault, which
mm,
means that they're always going to be stuck in some sort of negative zone
hmm
because the only way you can ever get anywhere is, well, the main way you can get anywhere is with your own decisions and your own determination to be a certain way or to go after a certain thing or whatever. Um, and I think that they don't have a sense of relatedness. They don't have sense of authority, of respecting authority. That they don't have the right um, mentorship growing up and the right um, experiences to experience risk and potential failure and potential success, to develop a sense of competence, to develop a sense of confidence. And um, I think that when it comes to nutrition, this is like the biggest thing where there isn't a sense of competence because it's viewed as it's somebody else's fault or it's outside of my control or it's random or it's genetics or a whole bunch of other made up stuff, which keeps people from actually getting there on their own. When it comes to me with fitness and nutrition, that's completely blown out of the water. I think it's almost completely up to me. I blame my genetics a little bit, um, 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 but the rest of it, I take a lot of responsibility and I even try to change my genetics, but in other words, by making myself more flexible, improving on the areas where I'm not automatically good at, um, um, and pushing forward with nutrition exercise to an extreme degree. And outside of nutrition exercise, I don't have that same level of confidence of what was the three stuff you said? What's their millennial sense of what?
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah,
question?
the autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And I think you might have hit all three of them in that answer there. That was really good.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying outside of
Mm-hmm.
personal training and nutrition, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
that same level of competence, relatedness, and
And
um,
autonomy.
autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm learning it, and in
Mm-hmm.
some and it's definitely it's definitely growing, and I definitely don't have zero in that sense. I have some skills in those other areas.
Very, very interesting. Good. Okay, well, that concludes the questions I have for the interview. I'd like to please, my last final thing to do with you is confirm the demographic data you've provided us previously.
Sure.
If it's okay, can I ask that you are a 28-year-old white Caucasian male?
Yes.
And working out with a personal trainer for greater than 3 years?
Yes.
And working with that personal
Just barely, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. And on average, the times working out with that trainer 3 or more times per week?
Yes, for sure.
Good. Okay. And then body fat percentage for goal attainment, your beginning body fat of 20%, ending of 7%, with a net difference of losing 13%.
Yeah.
Great. And then finally, the amount of body weight you lost in the program, starting 162 pounds, finishing at 147 pounds, of a net loss of 15 pounds.
Yeah, and I would have
Wow.
done whatever it needed to do for it to be as good as it could be.
Good, good, excellent. Well, I want to now, before I stop record, give you the opportunity if you'd like to have any questions now for the interview that we just conducted.
Sure. I mean, I guess I just have a question is like, does self-doubt play a role in any of this in outside of the areas of like fitness and nutrition? Like this, like because I score so high in nutrition and fitness, I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why is there like self-doubt in other areas? Is it just that those areas I have yet to continue exploring and take mastery over? Or is it a different tool that's required?
I'm glad you asked that, because that's a very interesting question. In fact, when I do the conclusion of these interviews, there's a what we call thematic analysis. I'm going to look at your interview and that question specifically, what you just asked there at the end, and see if I can come up with, hoping to answer that with some themes from some of the other participants. That's a really, really interesting question. I'm writing that down right now. That is good. I like that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks. I'm
So,
actually really, really curious as well.
no, that's really very curious. I've never really thought about that. That's interesting. And that helps me kind of guide in some of the other interviews here when I look at them. And as I mentioned, you will get a copy of the study dissertation. That way you'll get to see how you compared with the other millennials. You'll see your own profile right there. And as I mentioned, it will be anonymous, but
Awesome.
I think you'll like it. Yeah, it'll be really interesting because you'll get to
Yes.
see kind of, how that compares. I do want to thank you very much for your time and your valuable input. And again, I greatly appreciate everything that you shared. I'm going to stop record right now.